I manage a beachside cafe in Byron Bay. An American couple arrived at 8:47 a.m. demanding breakfast. I explained we open at 9. The husband checked his phone and said, "It's 8:47. That's basically 9. We drove 2 hours. I nodded and said we'd be ready in 13 minutes. His wife asked if I could make an exception since we're tourists. I told her the kitchen staff arrives at 9. She said, "Can't you just make toast?" I explained I'm the manager, not the cook. The husband offered me $50 to open early. I said, "Mate, it's 13 minutes. He responded, "In America, the customer is always right." I replied, "In Australia, the kitchen is always locked." That line sums up the whole channel. Cultural clashes that reveal how societies really work. I track these dynamics full-time, so you don't have to. If you value deep dives over hot takes, you know where to tap. They sat in their rental car, visibly furious, watching me drink coffee through the window for 12 minutes. When we opened, they ordered avocado toast and complained it was just mashed avocado on bread. I told them that's what avocado toast is. The wife said, "In California, they add special spices." At 9:30, they left a 3-star review saying we had attitude problems. My mate in Melbourne had an American ask why shops close at 5 p.m. "Don't you want to make money?" The bloke said Australian businesses were leaving money on the table. He proposed staying open until midnight. My mate said, "Nah, I want to see my kids." I work at a cafe in Sydney's Surrey Hills. An American businessman rushed in at 7:15 demanding an espresso to go immediately. I said it'd be ready in 5 minutes. He said he had a meeting in 10 minutes and needed it now. I explained we make each coffee fresh, and there were 3 orders ahead of his. He asked if he could pay extra for priority service. I told him that's not how it works here. He said, "In Manhattan, I can get coffee in 90 seconds. I replied, "Then you're drinking bad coffee, mate." Most people just laugh at stories like this. But if you're the kind who looks for the psychology underneath, that's exactly what I break down every week. Subscribe and stay ahead of the curve most people don't even see. He insisted he'd pay double if I made his first. I explained that'd be unfair to customers who ordered before him. He said, "They're not in a rush like I am." I asked how he knew that. He stammered and said his meeting was actually important. I told him everyone's time matters equally. He said this was un-Australian because Australians are supposed to be laid back, so why couldn't I be flexible? I said being laid back means we don't stress, but we also don't skip cues. His coffee was ready in 4 minutes. He took 1 sip and said it was too strong. I offered to add water. He declined and left, then returned 20 minutes later asking if we had almond milk because the regular milk upset his stomach. His important meeting was apparently not that urgent. I'm a pharmacist in Brisbane. An American woman rushed in demanding antibiotics for her sinus infection. I asked for her prescription. She said, "I don't have one. In America, I just tell them what I need." I explained that in Australia, you need a prescription for antibiotics. She said she'd already self-diagnosed using WebMD and knew exactly what she needed. I told her she'd have to see a doctor. She asked how long that would take. I said she could try a walk-in clinic, probably an hour or 2 wait. She was appalled. "An hour? For antibiotics I already know I need." I suggested she could also book a GP appointment, though that might take a few days. She said this was a healthcare crisis, and in America, she could just go to urgent care. I mentioned we have those too, but you still need to see a doctor first. She asked if I could just give her a few pills to hold her over. I explained that would cost me my license. She said she'd sign a waiver taking full responsibility. I told her that's not how medical regulation works. She then asked to speak to the head pharmacist. I said, "That's me." She demanded to know why Australia makes healthcare so complicated. I replied that requiring prescriptions for antibiotics prevents resistance and misuse. She said, "I'm a responsible adult who knows my own body." 20 minutes later, she returned with a prescription from the clinic next door, apologized for nothing, and asked if we did same-day delivery. I'm a bank teller in Perth. An American bloke joined our queue at 2:45 on a Friday. There were 6 people ahead of him. At 2:52, he approached my colleague and asked how much longer. She said probably 10 minutes. He said he had a flight at 6 and needed foreign currency exchanged now. She explained he was welcome to wait or come back earlier next time. He said, "Can't you just quickly help me? It'll take 2 seconds." She pointed out that everyone in the queue likely thought their business would be quick too. He said his was genuinely urgent because of his flight. She asked why he waited until 2 hours before his flight. He claimed the hotel concierge told him it'd be fast. At 2:58, he loudly announced to the queue that he had a flight and asked if anyone would let him go first. Nobody responded. One older woman said, "We've all got places to be, love." He muttered about Australian inefficiency. At 3:03, he reached the counter. His transaction took 8 minutes because he wanted 4 different currencies and questioned every exchange rate. When finished, he said, "See? That wasn't so hard." My colleague replied, "Would have been easier at 2 p.m., yeah?" He asked if we could have moved faster. She said no, we process transactions thoroughly. He said American banks have express lanes for simple requests. She said, "Sounds stressful, mate. I manage an office in Adelaide." We hired an American project manager who seemed shocked during orientation when HR explained our 4 weeks annual leave. He interrupted and said, "4 weeks? That's a month. How do projects get completed?" Our HR manager explained that Australians are entitled to 20 days minimum, plus public holidays. He said, "In America, 2 weeks is standard, and people barely take that." She replied that here, taking leave is encouraged for work-life balance. He asked what happens to urgent projects when people are gone. She said we plan around leave and team members cover each other. He seemed genuinely disturbed. What if everyone takes December off? She said many people do, and we operate with skeleton staff during Christmas. His face went pale. The office actually closes. She clarified that some departments reduce hours. He asked if he could opt out of some leave days for bonus pay. She said no. You're required to take leave for mental health. He said, "I maintain my mental health by staying productive." She replied that Australians maintain mental health by actually resting. 2 months later, he sent a meeting invite for 6:30 p.m. on a Friday. Nobody accepted. He came to my office confused. I explained people have plans Friday evenings. He said the project had a Monday deadline. I said, "Then we'll finish it Monday morning, mate." He asked if Australians ever go the extra mile. I said, "We go exactly the required mile during work hours. Then we go home." He called this a cultural barrier to excellence. I called it a culture that doesn't glorify burnout. I'm an HR coordinator in Canberra. An American team leader came to my office concerned about an employee who'd called in sick 3 times in 2 months. He wanted to discuss patterns of absence. I asked if the employee provided medical certificates. He said yes, but felt 3 sick days seemed suspicious. I explained that Australians get 10 paid sick days annually. He said, "I know, but taking them seems like abusing the system." I asked how taking legally entitled sick leave is abuse. He said in America, people come to work unless they're hospitalized. I replied that in Australia, we don't spread illness to colleagues. He said the employee's timing was convenient, always Mondays or Fridays. I pulled up the records. 1 Wednesday, 1 Monday, 1 Thursday. He conceded but said it still felt off. I asked if the employee's work quality suffered. He admitted it hadn't. I asked if deadlines were missed. He said no. I asked what the actual problem was. He said it was about commitment and team spirit. I explained that forcing sick people to work isn't team spirit. It's how you get everyone sick. He asked if I could have a word with the employee about attendance expectations. I said the only expectation is they use their sick leave when sick. He said, What if they're not actually sick? I asked if he had evidence of fraud. He didn't. I told him that questioning legitimate sick leave could constitute harassment. He seemed shocked. For caring about attendance? I said for doubting employees without cause. He dropped it, but later sent an email asking if we could implement a wellness incentive rewarding employees who don't use sick days. I replied that would be illegal. I work at a law firm in Melbourne. We hired an American associate who arrived his first day in a full suit, tie, polished shoes. Everyone else wore business casual. No ties, some in chinos. He looked around nervously. By day 3, he'd loosened up to slacks and a button-down, but kept the tie. On Friday, our senior partner wore jeans and a polo. The American approached me confused. "Is it casual Friday?" I said, "Mate, every day is fairly casual here." He said, "But you're a law firm. Don't clients expect professionalism?" I explained that Australians judge professionalism by competence, not wardrobe. He said American law firms have strict dress codes because appearance matters to clients. I said our clients care if we win cases, not if we wear ties. He seemed unconvinced. The following Monday, he wore a suit again. The partner joked, "Got a funeral, mate?" He stammered that he wanted to look professional. The partner said, "You look uncomfortable." Over weeks, he gradually relaxed, but we caught him side-eyeing colleagues in sneakers. One day, he asked if there was a minimum standard for client meetings. I said, "Just don't wear board shorts." He asked if I was joking. I said only partly. He attended his first client meeting in a suit, while the client wore a Bunnings shirt. After, he asked why the client dressed so casually. I said, because he owns a construction company and doesn't care about ties. The American said, "But we're his lawyers." I replied, "Yeah, and he's paying us for legal advice, not fashion opinions." He eventually adapted, but never fully shook the belief that we were all too casual. 6 months in, he showed up in jeans for the first time. The partner said, "Welcome to Australia, mate." I bartended at a pub in Hobart. An American couple asked for our Wi-Fi password. I said we don't have Wi-Fi. The husband laughed, thinking I was joking. Every business has Wi-Fi. I told him not this one. His wife asked how customers work remotely. I said they don't. It's a pub. People come here to drink and chat. The husband said, "But what if someone needs to check email?" I suggested they use their phone data. He said that costs money. I replied that so does running Wi-Fi, and we'd rather not encourage people to sit on laptops nursing one beer for 3 hours. His wife said, "That's bad business. You're turning away customers." I said we're packed every night with people actually socializing. He said American bars all have Wi-Fi because it increases dwell time. I said we don't want increased dwell time. We want table turnover. He called this anti-customer. I said it's pro-atmosphere. They ordered beers and spent 20 minutes complaining about offline Australia. Another regular finally said, "Mate, you're in a pub. Talk to your wife." The Americans said they had nothing to talk about without checking their news feeds first. The regular bought them around and forced a conversation about their travels. By the end of the night, they admitted it was the best pub experience they'd had. The wife asked if we'd consider getting Wi-Fi. I said no. She said, "Worth a shot." Look, Australians aren't lazy or uncommitted. We just don't believe work should consume our entire existence. If that perspective clicked with you, if you like peeling back how culture shapes behavior, you'll want this clarity on tap. That's what subscribing gives you. Context most people never get, every single week. We take our leave, we close on time, we don't answer emails at midnight. It's not about low standards, it's about sustainable ones. We work hard during work hours, then we actually live our lives. Got your own stories about Americans struggling with laid-back cultures? Or Australians baffled by American hustle culture? Share them below. And if you're American planning to visit Australia, remember, we're friendly, but we're not your servants. We're helpful, but we're not in a rush. And whatever you do, Don't expect Wi-Fi in pubs. Cheers!